Zen and the Samurai Sword is out now, but let's ask the question, who taught Masaaki Hatsumi? Who taught Masaaki Hatsumi his martial arts? Now, of course, you're all going to say Takamatsu sensei, who's here on screen in one of the documentaries done by the Bujinkan. But actually, if you watch his martial arts, it is very standard jiu-jitsu, aikido slash, around there. By standard, guys, I don't mean negative or bad. I just mean it's a good martial art. He's doing it right, but it's nothing different to what is the standard of the time. However, now, have you ever thought of this? Hatsumi moves totally differently to Takamatsu, totally. Now, you can say he's acquired that with age, but Takamatsu was very old, so why didn't he acquire this type of martial arts? Now, I'm not saying whether you believe it's good or you believe it's bad. We'll get into that. But the question is, if Takamatsu is the teacher of Hatsumi, and that footage was the time when Takamatsu was the oldest, Hatsumi never learnt this way of martial arts from Takamatsu. He couldn't have done it. So he's had to have developed this by himself, realistically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through now, talk about this subject, but I'm going to go through something else first. And what I'm going to do is come back to this at the end. So stay till the end of the video and we'll discuss this in detail. So my last video was the deepest secrets of Masaaki Hatsumi, and we got loads of questions, and it features Dennis Bartram. Now, people in the Bujinkan world have said, they've all been putting questions down below and everything. So this video was all about Dennis Bartram's teachings throughout. And I'm going to highlight and go through all the questions you guys have asked and all the points. So let's see what Dennis has got to say, and then I will go through it. But please, I want you to subscribe to Active Balance on Instagram and on YouTube. They have a book out. Now, the first thing I want to do is go through this idea that it's one touch kill, dim mark, and it doesn't work. And what Dennis does is nonsense. So I like that. So I want to go through it with you. So I want you to now just come with me, and I'm going to give a quick explanation. It'll take a few minutes, but I'm going to explain why this is not as strange as it seems. Right, Dennis Bartram says things, and it's really complicated, and you've got to try and keep up. But I've trained with Dennis Bartram many times, so I'm going to tell you very simply what he means. And this is why what he is doing is nothing like the death touch or any of that silly stuff. This is what Dennis is saying. Full stop. Right. When a human being walks, there's a moment when he's sturdy and there's a moment when he's not sturdy. So here in my walk, I'm sturdy. And then as I shift through my walk, I am not sturdy. So if I am stood like this and somebody tries to push me this way, I can just stand there. But the minute I go to swing this leg, I'm going to push over, So all you've got to do, imagine if two people were like this and they're walking, it's sturdy, push, sturdy, push. That's it. So just wander along, sturdy, push, sturdy, push. That's the rhythm, okay? So if I'm gripping up with someone and I go strong, and that's it, and I'm in there, I'm strong, you're never going to try your Budo magic on me. This is what you would do. Okay? Just wait. Because he can't stand there like that all day. That's it, you know what I mean? So what Dennis is saying is that there is, in the very simplest terms, there is 1, 2, 1, 2. There is sturdy on, and we have gates closed, open, closed, open, closed. And in its simplest form, it is a straight line. It is a straight line. Oh, I'm gone. Oh, I'm gone. Oh, I'm gone. That's it. Just one movement like that. You've seen me running at Dennis, and he just goes like that. And I'm flying Aikido style. That's not me going with it. That's just me not fighting back. There's a difference with going with it and not fighting back. Now it gets complicated because no fights go like this. So what Dennis is saying, in the middle of a fight, in the middle of scrapping, there is, those on-off moments. So he's scrapping and he can go in the middle of the fight and put you on the floor. Not because it's the death touch or it's a simple touch or it's that. It's because at that moment, my balance is in swing. And the minute it's in swing, he can manipulate it. Now I can equally manipulate back. I'm in swing, I can manipulate off. And when it comes to that, you do. But what's missing is, so a lot of people start in martial arts. This is where Dennis doesn't explain it very well, is that what happens is, I have been there, I was young, 25, fucking bit of money on the floor, not being a knob, being very nice and all that, but basically you're like, gripping, and you're thinking, the next thing you know, you get a dig in the ribs, and you're like, oh Jesus, and he goes, right, you're down you go. So after about 30 or 40 digs in the ribs, or digs in the jaw, or knees in the gut and all that, you sort of think, I think I've got to stop doing that. Because you can't stop him doing it, because that's the fight. And then, you know, you fight back and he's better than me. So it's like, right, down you go. So it's nothing to do with, so all the people who comment, oh, it's just bullshit death touch. I am with you. There is a level where this has gone, Hatsumi went too far and Dennis didn't. Hatsumi went all the way over there, and it's like, and you're like, no, you're going to get battered. Whereas if you grip Dennis, you can feel it. And I've gripped Hatsumi as well, and I've gripped them both. You grip Dennis, and it's like, when I grip him, I'm not controlling him. I grip him, and the next thing you know, he's controlling me. And then it's whack, and then it's down you go. So those people who've said in the previous video, I don't believe in this death touch rubbish, I understand where you're coming from. It does look a bit like that, doesn't it? It does like, oh, I'll put him on the ground, Aikido. But in truth, and I still believe in Aikido, Aikido is the refined, semi-skimmed version of martial arts. It's correct, but it won't work because you're not putting all the extra bits in and the reality. So Dennis's explanations are open, close, open, close. You can be close, 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 open, close, 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 open, close, close. It's like, or it's like open, close, and that's what you're doing. So the idea is you go, Jesus Christ, in that moment. If he gets it wrong, it's like, and he's not going to happen. And sometimes he doesn't get it wrong, and it's like, but the minute he gets it wrong, he grabs your other hand and pulls you. Because he knows, it's called quarter moves. Dennis taught me this years ago, quarter moves. The minute you go and something doesn't work, just go slightly, and then one else, and then they move on one else, and just quarter. And by the time you're at 3 or 4 quarter moves, the person's like, if you've got it right. So, there we go. Right, over to you, Anthony, in the studio. Thank you, Anthony, for your demonstration. Now, let's go to the next point here in the studio. Right, okay, guys. So first thing up is, at the beginning of the video, Dennis says something like this.
Had the privilege to be taught the principles of the Matsutara scrolls by Dr. Hatsumi, who had these scrolls dating back 3,000 years. And he taught us...
So 3,000 years. So people have asked me, why have you uploaded this video, Anthony? You're supporting Hatsumi and all that. I don't. I am not a Bujinkan person. I was a massive Bujinkan supporter. I was a student under Stephen, who was a student under Dennis, and Dennis taught me, and I went to see Dennis multiple times and all that. And obviously, me and Dennis still chat now. But this is the problem. So I am not trying to support the Bujinkan, but I do believe there is something in Hatsumi's way. Now, he went way too far with this weird touch, and it all got too much. And he started off moving away from Takamatsu's teachings to then doing his own freestyle. Even Tanemura moved away, said it's not like Takamatsu's. So we know Tanemura says this. And I think what happened was there was a point where Hatsumi went, okay, well, this works and we don't have to be so rigid. And it was at that point that Dennis was involved, and Dennis went off that way and was like, how do I make this real? Because to be honest, Dennis is from a hard town. He's a hard man from a hard place where Japan there's no danger, there's no anything. Hatsumi could just do whatever he wanted, and it went silly, and Dennis went real. Now, so what I want to carry on from there. So what I want to say there, so it's not that I'm supporting Hatsumi, I'm supporting Dennis. I think Dennis is one of the closest people we've got to how people used to fight realistically. But we've also got across, does this style of fighting exist in the historical records? I'll just write that down. So we'll get to that. Basically, does it exist? So we've got this 3,000-year-old techniques. Now, this is the problem I've got. People will come online and go, bollocks, rubbish and everything. And it's true. Those scrolls do not go back 3,000 years. But Dennis doesn't study history. Dennis doesn't study the history of his own school, Bujinkan. Dennis doesn't even call his stuff the Bujinkan. And he has, when you question Dennis, he has actually no idea about Koryu and all this. He says, I'm not interested. I'm going to study movement and I'm going to study how to fight. But really, he studies how to heal. His job is a healer. He heals. He also happens to be a very good fighter. So that's what we have here. Now, you and I know to claim 3,000-year scrolls to a point before language even existed in Japan, which is the stupidest claim in the world. But it's not uncommon in martial arts. So, for example, my own school, Natori Ryu, which I've reconstructed from the old scrolls, claims that its military teachings go back 2,000 years to Sun Tzu and to other Chinese warriors. So it's like, is that bollocks? Well, it's hard to say because, yes, those Chinese teachings went through. It didn't like they just stopped and then they were brought back up. We'd have to analyse where the Chinese teachings went. So it's possible that those Chinese teachings have been passed on, but realistically, it's the document that's been passed on. And that document is 2,000 years old. So it's not as ridiculous as it sounds to say these 3,000-year-old documents. I personally think it was all put together by Takamatsu. I think it's a 20th century invention based on old scrolls, because we know he went to the National Archives, or what it was then. We know we did all that. We know Hatsumi's got scrolls from the National Archives, photographs of them, like the Fukushima scroll and all that. So you can't just say, oh, it's nonsense, because actually Dennis is part of a Koryu, the Bujinkan, which tells him it goes back 3,000 years, which is historically inaccurate, but it's not traditionally inaccurate to say such things.
All healing systems were also linked to martial arts. So martial arts masters were also masters of the medicine, because they understood the energy flows of the body, what we call the Q-show, the vulnerable points, which you can revive. So you can use battlefield medicine. So somebody could have collapsed, you could press various points, revive them. Things of that. You could also sedate, you could kill with the same points. So the same points, which are called Q-show, which are they're the vulnerable parts in the body where they can either be attacked or healed from. And Hatsumi had records going back 3,000 years from an ancient school called Hichibuku Goshinjutsu, which was the system of self-healing for the martial system.
Right, guys, just if you didn't notice it, on the right side of Dennis is their book. So I actually want to say I fully support Dennis's healing. No matter what we all say about martial arts this or history that, Dennis's healing is second to none. It was at his seminar, my back locked out. I don't know why he didn't do it. I did it myself by doing this weird thing he asked us to do, this weird movement, and my back just went out that. And for 15 years, it never went back. I'm not joking. I've always had a bad back, and I've said it multiple times. I can't sit right. And then I went back to Dennis, like it was literally about 15 years later, and he was like, you know, I said, Dennis, will you please just have a look at my back? And he clicked, and that was 6 months ago, 5 months ago. And it's been perfect since. So I am 100% on board with Dennis's healing. And that book, if you want to get it, get a copy of it. But let's get back to what Dennis says. So here, Dennis will be watching this, and all the people from Active Balance. So what I'm trying to do is answer the points that people disagree with. So it might sound like I'm disagreeing with you, Dennis, but I'm not. I'm trying to actually support you. But there are points where we have to say that's not right, or that's a little bit misconstrued. So for example, Dennis has just said there, samurai would know how to kill and to heal. That is true to an extent, where it's a case of that is actually a lot to deal with. So some samurai, like Natoru Ryu, did medicine and healing. Not all. A lot of them didn't. There were certain samurai who did that. But most samurai would just know how to kill. And you'd be like, probably do a bit of battlefield self-maintenance, carry someone off the battlefield, get them. But they're actually samurai trained in healing. And that was Natoru Ryu was one example of them. They're military strategists who also do healing. But this is where it gets harder and really harder. Now this is where it goes well beyond Dennis and well beyond me. And it'll take someone else who's got in this knowledge is all those things about energy lines and chi. Actually, in Japanese concepts, we very rarely find chi in the body. We find it in copied Chinese manuals where people are talking about China, but actually in Japan, we find things like how to fix arrow wounds, how to stop blood, how to stop tiredness, sickness. And actually a lot of the stuff Dennis is showing is Chinese, not Japanese. And here Hatsumi has a name, and if you heard the name there, claims the school goes back 3,000 years. Of course, that's nonsense. No school goes back more than about 600 years. We know that, the Ryuha. That's why the Bujinkan saying they're going back to 1100 is total nonsense, because the Ryuhas don't exist. But that's become a semantic thing, like this lineage went back, meaning these teachings are passed on for this longer time, is different to this Ryuha. But you give a name of Ryuha, everything. Of course, it's not a 3,000-year-old Ryuha. That's like saying, you know, Batman came and took away the Joker, and that taught me everything. It's just too much. But he's saying there is a lineage, so somebody should follow up on that. I've never seen anyone talk in the Bujinkan, to my knowledge, about that name and that lineage. So that's for someone to jump on.
He added one other later, but for the first 10 years he was just teaching us those secrets and shared that with us. Yeah. So we were actually the first that he'd actually shared the Amatsutatara scroll secrets from. So we were very privileged in that occasion. And he showed us all of that concept.
Right, this might be one of the biggest things for the Bujinkan. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but that scroll there is what Hatsumi claims is ancient, or at least ancient knowledge. We've got to be careful because it's through translation. Is he claiming it's 3,000 years old, or it's information from 3,000 years ago, which is, again, we know all schools do. Like Mukyoshi Ryu, they get their skills from a sky god dragon, all right? So, you know, it's not the worst claim. So, that book there looks like, with the black lines, now somebody jump on and tell me if I'm wrong, the black lines looks like it is a woodblock print, and it looks like it is a hand-carved, not kaisho, woodblock print instead of the sort of like standard letters. It looks like it's been handwritten, carved out, and woodblock, and it has a spine on there. So, and Dennis has already told you the name of either the school or the system. Now, to be honest, it looks like a late Edo period, 1800s, early 1900s, self-backed copy or a print or a book that can be got probably from a bookshop, but Hatsumi is using it to teach. The question then becomes, was it passed on by Takamatsu, or did Hatsumi go and get that book and study it and say this is part of our lineage? Because in fairness, I don't believe the lineage. Most people don't believe the lineage who've done sort of history, but that there, guys, is what you should be on. You should be finding what that book is. Has Hatsumi just got an old book on medieval, you know, doctor? He's an osteopath himself, and has he worked it out and added it to his budo, or has it been passed on by someone or Takamatsu? What do you think, guys? But you should find, Bujinkan people should find that scroll. It can't be that hard to find because it looks like a woodblock print, and not only that, it looks like it was printed, published. So have a look, guys.
So when you look at the way of learning, most people learn techniques so they can learn form. But if you go back, way back, in the samurai tradition, children of a very small age would start to train with bokkens, wooden swords and this sort of thing. They'd learn these techniques because their lives depended on it. Some of them would be going to war at 14. So if you needed a big army, what you needed was people with skills using weapons en route. And so technique had to come about then. But the real elite warriors, they wouldn't use technique, because in a battle, technique will make you die. It doesn't work. You've got to look for the openings, you've got to create the openings, you've got to have the body movement, the tai sabaki, which is moving around your weapon, the tai jutsu, which is the body motion, to make it work. And then when you get through there, to be able to attack a vulnerable point and finish somebody in literally seconds. A fight doesn't want to be lasting more than seconds, especially in a warfare situation. And so he started to teach us some of those principles, well, a lot of those principles.
Right, important part. Dennis, I know, doesn't know much history of Japan. Really doesn't. But I'm not saying that's bad, like the rest of the people. But he is spot on here. 100% spot on. But what Dennis doesn't realise is either he's guessed it, or he's, in my opinion, which I hope has some sway, has basically hit the nail on the head for a complex argument that he's unaware of. So, how did samurai learn to fight? How did samurai fight? We don't know. And you might find that crazy, but we just don't know. There is no physical descriptions of samurai fighting up until about, you know, that of any use beyond a couple of words. Up until about 1600 roughly, and it's found in China, and I'm working with my Chinese translator to get this together with a load of lads as well, putting it together, and we're doing it in the background. So you'll get that, and I'll talk later at the end of the video. I'm going to ask Dennis to go through it as well, and I'll go through that, so stay with the video. But, so nobody knows the answer to this, but the theory, my theory so far, is that people were taught, so samurai used to live in the hills, yeah? They didn't live in cities, not so much. And they lived in the hills and looked after farms. They were agricultural warriors. They looked after farms, possibly even farmed themselves a little bit, and fought when the season came around. So there is no big dojos. There's no like 7,000 people here or 100 students there. It'd be like 10, 20, 30, however many's in your little farmstead, you're learning. So absolutely, I think Dennis is correct. Because it's like you just learn to pick up and your dad will teach. And like me and Dennis train, there's like 4 or 5 people there be like, yeah, you feel that, yeah, okay, put this on, wang, that works, and here that works, you know, do this, knife here, you're all right, cut them here, you're done. Well done, son. But then they move into the cities. Historically, we know they move into the cities, and we get the rise of dojo culture. And when you get the rise of dojo culture, so I'll disagree here that Dennis said they need to be an army, so they train them like en masse. I don't agree with Dennis. That is a Chinese thing historically. The Chinese had armies, conscriptions. The samurai are not conscripted. They are hereditary warriors who live in their own agricultural farmsteads, who were spread across Japan, and their job was to be ready for war. And that's how a samurai had an army. But Dennis is not incorrect that it was the rise of forms. We've all done it, yeah? the rise of forms, which comes about in the Edo period dojo culture, when there's basically the inheritance rights change and second sons need to do something. So if we're not going in the bloody priesthood, you're opening a dojo, or you're becoming a mercenary, or you know that type of thing. You're bodyguarding somebody or something. That is what happens. So they needed forms to teach them, and by the 20th century, it is absolutely wrapped up in form. And then Japan goes through its very, very. I'm going to cut this short because we're getting long. Next stage, ultra formulaic, and you're left with what we have today. Okay. Even Hatsumi is like, the only one that's broke away from that. Is the only reason I support Hatsumi. Not for his school, not for the claims, but because he's the only one who broke away from form and went back to what would be real fighting. But he went crazy silly, and Dennis went true. That is where we're at.
Maybe people who look at Hatsumi's or Bujinkan techniques say, oh, that wouldn't work necessarily on the street or that sort of thing. But a lot of the time when you're saying you're affecting the person's neurology, that doesn't necessarily look like what it would look like on a movie.
Absolutely. It's not Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
It's very different. And the whole basis of it was an assassin's art, his Budo. So you couldn't apply it fully. I mean, you could make people collapse on the floor. You couldn't be knocking people out all the time. It can't be used in competitions, because part of it is if you've got an exposed digit, I could get hold of your finger and disable the whole body. There's various points around, vital points around, you understand, an eye or a throat, and people strangle throats. Just one point on the right place can totally disable or kill a person, and it's having that knowledge and that precision of knowledge, and it's quite a responsibility, because you could heal, you could kill, but in normal fights, like MMA and things like that, you're wearing a glove, you're not allowed to use finger grabs, you can't stand on people's toes. Some of the evasion techniques wouldn't work because you want to go 3 rounds, so people are just battling away, and people compare it, but it was a totally different art. There wasn't competitions in it for that reason, which was often misunderstood.
Okay, let's do a few things there. Yes, so this is where I think Dennis goes very wrong on when he tries to put his art across, and it's the same as Hatsumi, but I think Hatsumi, as I say, went wrong in the way he was doing it. But this is where it goes wrong. Dennis trains year after year after year, and with people like me and his students and everything. And as I said at the beginning of the video, we're all used to, you can start with Dennis and you can grip him and you go, yeah, you're never going to get off me. And the next thing you get head-butted and poof, you're straight on your noggin and your eyes ringing, you're bloody like this is cracked or something. And the next thing it's whack in the side of your ribs. And then he goes, you know what I mean? So I agree, Dennis doesn't put enough of that in. And simply because I was give you an example, as you know, and I must admit, you don't ever be that. In martial arts, it's difficult because in martial arts, if you just go in like that, you end up with that idiot you're going to either win the fight or there's going to be a fight, and it's not teaching him, it's just a fight. So what you have to do in martial arts is you go along and you sort of play along. We all do it, play along, and then you have to decide afterwards, is he good at martial arts? Because if you have an outright fight with someone, then, which I suppose you should do to learn if you're harder than they should teach you, but that doesn't really happen. So you've got to sort of get to that mutual agreement, same as Aikido, same you got. So same as sparring or jiu-jitsu, we tap out. So everybody goes on about jiu-jitsu and all that, but jiu-jitsu people tap out all the time. It's like, that's not going to work on the streets, is it? Or you've hurt me. Okay, I'll stop. You know, it's like, so why nobody goes on about jiu-jitsu people in that way? Whereas obviously jiu-jitsu is really good and you're just putting it in and they're bracing it, but then they stop halfway through or open the legs and say, yeah, no, they're not going to hit me in the nuts, or they've got face-to-face as if you're not going to bite the face off. So the problem is you can't, we're all right, you can't show it. You really struggle with training martial arts. I struggle with it because you've either got to start biting people's faces, slamming their heads off curbs, headbutting them, kicking them in the nuts, and then applying a lock. So if you want to know how to apply a lock, it's dead simple. When somebody grabs you and you're doing all this and it ain't working, belt them in the nuts, right? Headbutt them, smash them in the face, and apply a lock. You'll find that the lock goes on really easily. It's like, so when I've done it with Dennis, grip, boom, that lock, and it's in this moment, the lock's on, the lock's there. He doesn't have to do anything. He's like, everyone's like, oh, he's hardly touching him. It's because I'm doing this. It's face and I've just been belted as hard as I can. But he stops doing that. One, people stop it when they get older. And two, I don't enjoy it. You're getting old and you've had enough of being belted in the face. So you're like, I'm belted in the stomach and everything. You think, oh, it's just, so we go into the nice, almost Aikido roles. So it is a problem with this style of martial arts. I'm not just talking about Bujinkan. With the Aikido, sort of fluid jiu-jitsu, you can't really, you're just going to kill people or break people. And it is a little bit also of a problem when you say, well, you can't use it in competitions. It's right, you can't. But the problem is you get a lot, what Dennis doesn't realise, or maybe does realise, is you get so many really soft people who hide behind that statement. You can't use it in competitions. Oh, yeah, we've heard that before. But actually, there's two people. There's the really soft idiot who will never win in a fight, who says, oh, you know that. And then there's the guy who's like, I'm going to stamp on your nuts. I'm going to bite your face off. I'm going to pull your eyes out. And then I'm going to put a lock on you and choke you to death. And I'll kill your family. And you're like, yeah, you can't use that in competition. So I go. So when somebody says it, you've got to look at them and think, are they A or are they B? Dennis is B, right? Let's just put it that way. You know, he is, because I've tried it, and I'm not a soft lad. I'm not trying to say, oh, look at me, but I'm not soft. And I've had plenty of fights, and not for a long time. I'm old now. I've probably got one good fight left for me. I'm like, oh, you've hurt me. But now, and I know, you grip him, you're not getting out of it that well. You know what I mean? That's the problem here, guys. So it is a problem for all of us. And also, where Dennis is wrong there, it's an assassin's art. It's not true. It's not true. The Bujinkan did not come from an assassin's art. We don't know where the Bujinkan martial arts come from. That's the entire point of my debate. We don't know. And I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I think it actually is closer to the old style fighting, Dennis's version of Bujinkan, than the Koryu today.
It's a benevolent heart that you heal with. It's even a benevolent heart that you would harm with. So if you, the idea that somebody was attacking you, you do the least minimum to disarm them and actually teach them a lesson rather than beat the crap out of them. And so you've got to have a benevolent heart, and that is, the heart of a warrior is benevolence. So that's important. Also, the mindset is that you haven't got to have fear, anger, anxiety. So he taught us various, they're called mudras or hand positions, that would aid in that meditation of that mindlessness. So his whole training approach was zero. So
this is not really a Bujinkan thing or Hatsumi thing here, but it really is a problem in understanding the history of the samurai and the history of martial arts and everything. I don't know if this attitude of the benevolent heart and everything is a modern thing imprinted on the samurai, because actually, if you look at samurai history, maybe I'm skewed because I look at the certain samurai history, but if you look at most samurai recorded history, we don't know what went on unrecorded, of course, that's just the basics of history. But actually, to give you an example, two samurai were captured by some other samurai, and they were taken to a place, and they were kept alive for days and everything, and then they were beheaded just before they got to their destination, so their heads were fresh. So the benevolent heart of the samurai was not to present rotting heads to his master. So it was like, let's not bother about these guys. It's like, they're all right, let's keep them walking. They've got a bit of walking in them. Cut their heads off, and then look at them, Lord, they're fresh. So I don't know how benevolent samurai really were. And we do get it coming in the things like Katsuninto, which is the basically the life-giving sword and the death-dealing sword in Yagyu Shinkagyu. So we do find in the early 1600s to the late 1800s the idea of more benevolence, but I'm not sure if it's quite, we'll teach them a lesson. Mainly it was like, you will be murdered, and if you stole anything in Japan, you got crucified or beheaded. And people went out and tested on your corpse. So it is one of those where we're all stuck in that Japanese spell of, did they really? Because actually, and I've said this before, Japanese soldiers in World War II, and if you're not old enough to know this, if you're young, basically were considered horrible. And even after the war, most people who were in the war against the Japanese hated the Japanese for decades because of what they did, and it was horrendous. And they are no different to samurai. The only time it's changed is after the atomic bomb, and get it or not, the rise of Aikido and the rise of all like this free-flowing benevolence floods the system, floods the sort of the area. And I think it is a response to the horrors of World War II. I don't think it really reflects the ages of war. If Dennis was a samurai back then, he'd be cutting heads off and bringing them home on strings, going, yeah, how we doing, boys? That's the truth. We'd all be doing it, or one of us would have our heads on Dennis's string and we'd be walking down the road.
It was unique in the way he did it, and the way he taught us was unique, and it wasn't part of the Bujinkan system. And what I'm not doing here is trying to say anything about the Bujinkan system. It's historical, it's got its heritage, it's perfect. You know, I'm a Bujinkan through and through, but Hatsumi showed us stuff that he was doing that was different. It wasn't technique, it was a different feeling. And he tried to teach his Shihans, his top instructors before, but they were more interested in the heritage and things. So he welcomed the fact that we'd done our research and we were eager. I think he was happy to be able to pass this piece of information as a heritage on to us.
Right, guys, this is a good time or a good place to put this. And so this is where it is. People have asked, Anthony, why are you supporting Hatsumi? This is that, and I'm not. And this is where me, Dennis and Hatsumi have three different ways of going. So we are all Bujinkan. Hatsumi obviously made the Bujinkan or Togakure. And we got Dennis, you got me. Now, I believe, honestly, my honest belief is Hatsumi broke away from all that and thought, that's not how you fight. And he moved, and he wasn't, he was a bone doctor and all that malarkey. Whether he's a medical doctor, which is disputed, I agree. He's probably not a medical doctor. He is a sports massage guy in the West, really. But he's obviously learned a lot more behind the scenes. But I think the equivalent of his grade is like, sports therapist and all that sort of stuff. Then I think he's gone way over that way. There was a 10-year thing where he was getting it right, but even then he was doing like the 3 people locking up, which is actually a bit Aikido-y Japanese there anyway. Then I think he went, and we all know what we're talking about when there's those videos of him when he gets purple hair and he's just touching people and they're falling down. And he's not even one of them where you can say that locks on and the guy's being thrown. They're just falling over, and he's clearly getting to his 70s and then his 80s, and now he's nearly 90 and doesn't do it anymore. There was that moment where it just went, and maybe he got too popular. Dennis was like, okay, I'm not studying all that Bujinkan stuff. I'm not doing it. I love Bujinkan, but no, I'm going to do this, and I'm not really going to learn the history. I was going to learn how to heal. That's my job, and I'm going to assume what Hatsumi is correct and do it. And I was like, I think the martial arts that Dennis is doing, I don't know where it's from. I don't know where Hatsumi's that moment. See, I don't like saying I like Hatsumi's martial arts because I really didn't. At the beginning, when you look at him in the earlier days, he's not very good. And if you look at him in after a certain point, he's not very good. But there's a fraction of a second where he could be good, and he could be, that could be how people fight. And that's where I think Dennis went with it there, and that's it. But Dennis, of course, didn't follow, and I went off into the history. And I know a lot of you guys out there know the history behind it. And it's hard to explain to people like Dennis or to people out there who just come in and say, well, you've got this Japanese guy with all these scrolls, that must be real. And we all know, no, it's easy to get these scrolls. There's hundreds of thousands of them. And if you read your own languages, and I've always said the best way to understand for a Westerner is the Bujinkan real or fake is to say this following thing. Let's imagine I come to you as a white man and I have a Crusaders cross on it, and I say I've got an 700-800 year art from the 1100s about sword fighting from the Knights Templar, and I'm going to teach you everything here, and I've got these scrolls which are just, I've bought, an antique scroll, and I can speak a bit of Latin, and I can read this Latin, and I'm like, or the older language, but I can sort of get away because maybe I'd studied French or something, and I can get through the Romance language part of it, and what I say is 100% incorrect for history, like against all the Templars' knowledge, and I say, oh, forget all that, this is the real stuff, believe me, I'm a real Knights Templar. Yep. That's how it is when Japanese people say I'm a real ninja and I produce this scroll. So what I'm interested in, guys, and I'm going to get to at the end, what I'm interested in is not ninja, Hatsumi ninjutsu. We all know it's not. Is it assassin thing? It's not. I mean, we can confidently say that through 10, 15 years of research now, we can establish 99% of it is made up by Takamatsu. We just know that. But there's that moment in there where you've got Hatsumi and Kono and maybe Kuroda Sensei and Dennis, where it's not formal training and it's not Hatsumi's later, or it's not Aikido. Everybody flows. This is wonderful. Just fall down. There's something there where you think, that seems not like jiu-jitsu, but it's not this. And there's like, that's probably how a battlefield would happen. And Hatsumi's not the only one to do it. Kono Sensei was there as well. So I thought it was a good time to bring that
when
one
you
up.
trained with Dave, who studied traditional karate styles for over 35 years, and some of the concept of not blocking a kick necessarily, being in a different place, moving in when you might think it's not safe to move in, but that's maybe the only option you've got. With
that day's training was unique. I mean, he came to our classes, and then we did that little piece of footage, and his kicks were fast. Blink of an eye, and he's got your head. And he couldn't believe that when he fired a punch off, that I could actually move in, not block the punch, not be in a place where it was going to be effective. Took his balance. That was the biggest thing. He says it on there, that I blocked his counter-attack punch, so misdirected the kick, stopped him from using the Gaikazuki counter-punch, but the biggest thing, he realised I totally took his balance. That was unique to him. And then you'll see it, you just make it collapse. Because you've already got the person in balance, they're using the volitional muscular system to keep them up, but it's fighting to keep you up when you've lost your balance. So once you've took a person's balance, you're halfway there, and then of course completely with the flow.
So this is what I would like to put in there. This is where a lot of people don't understand when it comes to Aikido and it comes to sort of the Taijitsu and all this, is there is a simple point, and I said this right at the beginning. Basically, if you're in balance, nothing's going to work. All these fancy locks, all these fancy moves, fingers on necks and all that, doesn't really work. Now, you can make it work, but the point is you have to put someone out of balance. Now, either you wait, you've got an option. They move, and in their movement, where they're in balance, but they're moving, you can push them out of balance. So, for example, the guy kicks, he's off. He only has to be off by that much. And what Dennis is saying there, the minute they're off, you've got to fight for your balance back or fall over. So some people just go and roll back. Yeah, but then you're into the, do we roll outside, do we do that? So all you're doing as a martial artist is waiting for someone to move and making sure it's balance. That could be a right, it could be in the middle, a dig, and they're like, oh, sugar the balance, and then you're off. Or you can manipulate and move their balance, but that's your other choice, which is a much more difficult thing to do. But this is what most people don't understand. They see Aikido, they see Taijitsu, they see everything. Oh, how would you do that? Do it on me. And you're like, you just wait, just keep waiting. You know, they have to be out of balance. And if you can't put them out of balance, you will never do any of those techniques. So the number one thing is get them out of balance, then do the technique. So when you see Dennis going and throwing, or Aikido throwing him, and it's all going over, the only reason that's happening is because when you're watching the technique, you're looking for, oh, cool throw, cool move. You're missing the main bit, which is the split second where that person moves and you move them out of balance. That's it. After that, when they're trying to move back into balance, you do it. So actually, in all of these moves where you see me being thrown by Dennis, I am semi-throwing myself. Not because I'm going with it and it's all very fake. It's because he puts me out of balance, and then I'm like, I'm either got to go backwards or forwards. So I'm trying to get back in balance, and then he just puts me the other way. And it's one of those tennis players. It's the same as tennis. Yep. Rally. This is a fight. Bang. Rally. But a good tennis player goes until the point this guy stood still and this guy's doing this, and eventually he falls over and the shot's gone. It's exactly the same as martial arts. Exactly the same. But you do it in a second. It's like down. That's it. It's down, and it happens in that fraction of a movement when the snake movement goes. Okay, guys, that's what we're looking.
He'd go, okay, and he's got the person's arm out here, and then he would make things happen slowly, and they'd say yes, but the person wouldn't leave the arm there. What they don't realise is you can't take it away. So what looks as if the person's cooperating in the execution of the technique he's showing, they have no choice, and until you can actually do that and have that choice, it still looks fake, it looks slow, it looks predetermined, it looks set up. Come and feel my feel. I'll show you. I want you to learn this feel, because mankind needs it. It's not about fighting. It's not about fighting. At 75, I don't want to fight to last too long. It's about the self-healing, the self-motivation, the mindfulness. All of those techniques existed inside of a martial arts mind, and martial art is misunderstood. It's not even really looked at as an art. You know, you see an artist paint a picture, oh, he's an artist. You see a martial artist doing his work, you don't go, oh, a true artist. It's understood as an art of what it is for body, spirituality, well-being, the whole picture.
Yeah.
Okay, I really like this bit. I think Dennis is bang on here. So yes, as I've said earlier, it does look fake and it can look fake, but all you're going to do otherwise is do the low-level brawling that happens when just brawling actions, which I know they're hard men, and I know you got MMA, you got all that, and it's hard men, and they're in there, and they got the cauliflower ears and all that. But like you said, it's never going to become an art. It's never going to move to that next level. It's going to be two lads mainly using strength with some technique in there, and it's never going to move beyond that. And the moment you introduce a knife or weapons, a second person, it's redundant. So I'm not against jiu-jitsu or anything like that. I think it's wonderful. I think it's nice to see sort of like the Japanese jiu-jitsu coming back in, even though they call it Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But I think Dennis is right here. What he does, what Hatsumi does, what a lot of people who try to study bodybuilding, it does look a bit fake, and especially the Japanese, it can look a bit fake. And that is because there are so many fakes out there. Lots of traditional Japanese Koryus. They're not fake, they're real schools, but their fighting is fake. It's so diluted and so removed from this type of study that it's no longer reasonable. And the problem is Taijitsu, what was the golden years of Hatsumi, all of that gets lost because 99% out there of the people who are wearing the same gis, the little tabi, that even the Bujinkan people during the trains are terrible. Like one of the worst organisations in the world for quality control is the Bujinkan, and we all know it. Everybody agrees. Even the Bujinkan say yes, it's terrible quality control. And you've got people at one end like Dennis, who was like searching for something in 1980s, found it. He's now 75, 76, and he's out there doing it, and he's, you know, really living it, and living as an old martial artist would do from the old days, because that's his job, he's training, you know, he's doing everything, versus the sort of the guy who's just making stuff up on a weekend and everybody's going with him. Yeah, you put your arm here. Okay, what's next? Okay, I do this, yeah. And Dennis is saying, no, I'm leaving you no choice. And if you do have that choice to pull it back, we wait for the next move, go to quarter moves again. That's okay. You can pull it back. We'll wait for the next round, you know, the next run of things. So I like what Dennis is saying.
Things I realised way back from 1995 was that some people might not want to come through this system, but should have knowledge of these skills. And that's what I'm doing now, is with the active balance system, I'm showing you where it would exist in the Budo, but how it exists in the natural course of things, in self-healing and correction. And so I've softened that right down just to give people the principles of the both duality.
Irrelevant if you believe in Hatsumi or, you know, his past or anything. If you, and I'm going to speak honestly here, guys, if you are a student of the Bujinkan and you wish you could be in Hatsumi's heydays or wish you could have conversations with him, the best thing you can do is study under Dennis. One, you can get all those tips and secrets from him, but two, I think Dennis is just much better at doing what Hatsumi set out to do. And if you are a Bujinkan member and you've got this far in the video and you're clearly hardcore because you're still here 40 minutes later, just follow Active Balance. Please follow them. And Instagram, on YouTube, and they run their courses. They really do. So what I'm going to do next is get into all the other little bits I've written down, but that's the end of Dennis for the minute. Please remember that they've got a book, and that book is only a slim little book, but inside there's lots of QR codes which will take you to all the different videos that they have in their courses and things like that. So please do get yourself a copy of that book if you can, and at minimum follow Active Balance. So let's get on to the rest of it. Right guys, I'm going to finish up now, so let's go where we are from. So, is it how samurai used to fight? Right, this is a problem. So straight away, this is back to where did this come from? Where did it come from? It's obvious that Takamatsu wasn't moving like this. Hatsumi's, so where's it from? Is it, but also how close is it to real fighting? Now we have to see Dennis when he moves, the pressure points and things like that. Most of it wouldn't work in armor, so it seems like unarmed combat. Obviously, the locks and all that and the throws work in armor, but on the whole, what Hatsumi teaches and always seems to teach is unarmored combat, which is Yawara or Jiu-Jitsu. It's the same thing. It is not Kumiuchi. Kumiuchi being armored, predominantly armored combat. Now, I'm not saying that Hatsumi is not taught in armor before your keyboard warriors start. Yes, we know. And yes, Dennis has also looked and taught in armor. But on the whole, when you see them fighting, the strikes they are making, the movements, the pressure points, they're talking about touching tissue, they are 99% talking about unarmored combat. So this to me sounds Edo period. Not saying that this is annoying, but not saying unarmored combat wasn't done in the Sengoku period. It was, but most likely it's an Edo period thing, or skill set. Where it came from, if it was reinvented, if it was rediscovered, I don't know, but that's what it seems to be. So what I want to do with Dennis, and this is basically me and Dennis live about 5 hours away from each other, so I've got to drive up for 5 hours, and as you guys know, I'm in the middle of the build, so we're going to book a hall or a hotel, and we're going to go through things he needs for his channel, things I need for my channel, and whether we create a new YouTube channel, I'm not sure. We talked about it, but whether we think that's too far off, we're not quite sure, but or we'll put them on this channel. But on the whole, I'm going to go to Dennis, and I think Dennis is the closest how Samurai fought. But what I'm going to do now is add a new dimension to Dennis's training, and that is I'm going to use the scrolls and say, well, we know this happened, and we know that happened. Dennis, you're the master of movement. You're the artist here. Make it happen. How do we get there? How do we do this? Most of them are self-explanatory, but let's not make it a technique. Let's actually do it. So, can you give us a go? Now, the problem here is that samurai tended to fight with swords. This is a big issue. There was unarmored fighting, but when you get judo, aikido, jiu-jitsu, all that, it tends to be later in samurai times when it's unarmored, and you tend to get, even though it was there, don't get me wrong, it was there, I've got some old scrolls here on, the predominantly people had a blade. It was that simple. Samurai was never caught without his wakizashi or sidearm. Basically, it can be any size, don't matter, but a big bloody knife, and that comes into the fray. Why samurai started to teach unarmed fighting without knives, I don't know, but there is documentation to show they did. Why they did, I don't know, because fundamentally a samurai is never ever allowed to be without his sidearm, except when meeting aristocracy or the lord. Beyond that, people would say, can you remove your wakizashi? And you'd be like, no. What for? Are you trying to kill me? Why do you need? I'm not going to kill you, so don't worry about it. So, and sometimes in a tea ceremony room, but then even then they would use what's called shinobizashi, not a ninja knife, but basically a hidden blade. So the chances of catching a samurai in a fight unarmed is very, very slim. They slept with their swords nearby. They travelled with their swords. They had hidden daggers on them. They had assistants. They had servants who would have a dagger. Why the samurai developed unarmed martial arts fighting, I have yet to discover. It's the most perplexing thing about martial arts is why did they develop it? So I'm going to go with, so most of what I'm going to show with Dennis is going to be swordsmanship and dagger fighting, and I'm going to try and pull out some of the unarmed fighting as well. But, you know, we'll do that. So hopefully you'll get there. Right. So now we're going to go to the final thing, which I said we'd come to, is Hatsumi's movement, Takamatsu. Where did they got it from? Where did Dennis get it from? So I'm going to point some things out here that are obvious if you think about it. Takamatsu in that footage is an old man. So anybody who says, oh, he's not moving like because he's old, that's not true. Hatsumi is old and can't move very well anymore, but still moves in his way, non-standardized martial arts. Takamatsu clearly has standardized martial arts. Whether he knew a lot, whether you know, the idea of the fingers and all that pointing and everything, yeah, it's all there. I'm not saying he didn't know martial arts, he was a good martial artist, etc. But the point is, he wasn't doing the same thing Hatsumi was doing. So Hatsumi once, and it's in the early days of his videos, maybe not the early days of his training, but he detached from Takamatsu's training and went in a new direction. And Tanemura is known to have said he didn't believe in it, so he went back to Takamatsu's. So think about this, Bujinkan guys. Tanemura left that, of their cousins as well, and there's other reasons, but his main beef was he wasn't sticking to the same fighting style as Takamatsu. So if he isn't doing the same fighting style as Takamatsu, what is he doing? Because it's not Takamatsu's teachings. So my answer to this question is Hatsumi did what Dennis did and went, he was a bone doctor and realised actually there's better ways to do this. I am a bone specialist. I can fix bones. I can fix sports massage injuries. Whether he was a real PhD doctor or not, he can fix them. Okay, so I'm going to change this martial arts to a new way. So he revolutionized the martial arts. But where did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? It obviously went wrong somewhere. And no matter what, I know Dennis loves Hatsumi and all that. There is a point where everybody knows Hatsumi went a little bit cray-cray and he was just touching people and they're falling down. And that's where Bujinkan gets its really bad name from. So we just don't know where Hatsumi got it from. But I would say this. Hatsumi studied the body and he found a new way, but then went pear-shaped. And we know, and Dennis says it himself, he studied new ways, NLP under this guy, this under this guy, new ways were added. So Takamatsu gives Hatsumi something. Where it's from, we don't know. Hatsumi manipulates it, changes it, and finds a new way to do it, throws that bit at the side. He did honestly throw Takamatsu's teachers aside because he doesn't follow the forms at all. In fact, he ditched the forms. So he found this new way. And then Dennis, seeing Hatsumi, and I know Dennis has not seen Hatsumi for years, but he's still adding to his knowledge, so he clearly doesn't get it from Hatsumi. His base foundation is Takamatsu, Hatsumi, but then Dennis, and then each one of them has spread different ways, and that is how we know Koryu isn't the same it is 400 years ago, because it keeps changing. So that's what we've got here is Dennis has Hatsumi's base teachings. Hatsumi seems to have left Takamatsu's base teachings behind, and this is where we're at. Is it historical? I think Dennis moves the way a samurai would, moves that way, but I don't think he does the techniques directly that the samurai would do. There are obvious similarities, this lock, that lock, manipulation of that, manipulation of that. But whenever I've researched this, the documentation, which is not a full project yet, we're getting there, it doesn't seem to teach those types of things. The movement, I think, is there. The locks are there. I've yet to find pressure points. I'm not saying I'm going to find it, we will find it. But majority of it is get a knife out, stab them, throw them, do something. Yep. So maybe if Dennis corrected this way, which is what I want Dennis to do, I know corrected is the wrong word. He is doing it for a different reason. I want to find the history of how the samurai fought. Dennis is saying the Japanese live well. They sit cross-legged. They walk this way. They use this sort of brain patterning. They live to a late age. I know this is how the Japanese have been teaching fighting in the 20th century. Let's do this. And that is a good thing. So Takamatsu, Hatsumi, Dennis, me. I'm trying to get that historical line in there. So that's what I'm hoping. Right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. My name is Anthony Cummins. I was a Bujinkan student, but I was kicked out, in fairness. It was deserved, because I went and found the true history of the ninja. The true history of the ninja does not, under any way, guys, I'm not supporting the Bujinkan's ninjutsu, but I do support the fact that Hatsumi had something for a moment in time, and Dennis took that moment in time and went with it. But what I'm trying to do is combine it all together and ask the question, how did samurai and ninja really fight? And then hopefully, over the next few years, we can start to answer that as more and more translations of ancient scrolls come in through my team. Okay, guys, please, please, please get yourself a copy of Zen and the Samurai Sword. That's by me, Anthony Cummins. Book of Bushido, Book of Ninja, Yin Yang, Art of War, How to Be a Modern Samurai. All of those will help you. Good luck. Speak soon. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Anthony Cummins. If you want to follow me online, you can follow me on YouTube on Samurai and Ninja History with Anthony Cummins, where I'll deal with all the history of the samurai and the ninja. You can follow me on Samurai Martial Arts Real Training. This is where you'll get only the physical, you'll get only the martial arts. You can follow me on Natori Ryu, where I teach and show all the different strategies and warfare related to the Natori family. Now, outside of this, I also do some other things. So you can join me on Western Culture and Tradition, where I look at the little bits of information from the West, our folklores, our customs. You can also join me on Warduke. This is purely a fantasy channel, a little bit of fun for me in my spare time. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me again on Samurai and Ninja History. This is my basic account. And again, getting back to the fantasy, you can follow me on the Dungeon Crawl, where I'll go through everything that's eerie, dungeon synth, and all of those fantasy elements. And finally, I put some of my art on all Space Marine chapters. I do this just so I can do a little bit of art and keep up to date with the artistic world and keep my skills alive. I hope to see you there, guys, and I look forward to all of the comments on my posts and videos.